best player I've played with. In the both spells, I'd probably say in the first spell was Jerry Armstrong. Jerry played in the World Cups. Fantastic player, used to deliver the ball into the box when you were least expecting, didn't even have to beat players, turned people inside out and was a real talent. Secondly, I played with Arthur Alberston. Arthur was at Man United, won a lot of medals with Man United, was the model of consistency, delivered balls into your feet, the quality was superb. I'm going to say probably when both spells at Chesterfield, those were the two players that were the best players I played with. Jokers of the team, so firstly probably Chris Marples, goalkeeper for Chesterfield for many years. Chris liked a kind of practical joke, so once we were up training, myself and Chris decided to wind up Kevin Randall and John Duncan by having a play fight. Play fight was quite real, so started off a bit of a play, then it was muddy, we were rolling about in the ground and they ended up abandoning training. Next spell also played with John Ryan. John Ryan had played for Man United, and John Ryan was just up to all sorts. Always wanted to have a little bit of a fun and a joke. Really funny guy. Person that you wouldn't want to have a rumble with, probably Brien Scrimmager to start off with. Brien Scrimmager was obviously Scottish and a great big guy. He actually ended up running the Black Swan pub in Chesterfield at one time, and it was unbelievable. He used to just pick guys up and throw them out the door, never bothered. He used to right Goldie out the way and he would get stuck in. The next one played with in the second spell was Big Paul McGugan, another Scotsman as well. It's funny the two Scotsmen liked to rumble, but Big McGugan just used to go right through people. We were in a pub as well. He was a big guy. He was as wide as he was tall. So at one point, fantastic guy, but you wouldn't mess with. Best dancer at the club. First spell probably Steve Spooner. Second spell Paul Lemon. Throw this one in. Worst singer has to be Tony Brien. Tony was tone deaf. Didn't know he was tone deaf. He used to get up at karaoke's and sing, and he would clear the pub. He was terrible. Good story about Tony though. One time when we were in Magaluf, we'd been there for a couple of weeks. We stayed 6-7 weeks in the end. Tony, we met these Dutch girls, and I could speak quite fluent Dutch because I lived in Holland for a while, and told Tony that they couldn't understand any English, which was good because Tony couldn't speak English. He was obviously Irish, but Tony started saying all sorts, and they just sat and listened to him, and in the end they declared that obviously they could speak perfect English, and Tony was mortified. Horse for music. First time at the club must have been Mick Henderson. Unbelievable. I think he looked a bit like Mark Knopfler. He liked that type of music. He was a Geordie boy. He liked a lot of weird and wonderful stuff, and used to hear it in the dressing room sometimes and ban it. Second time was definitely Bruno. Big Bruno, lovely big guy, but his music choice was terrible. A lot of reggae stuff and kind of stuff I'd never heard of. A lot of biggie bass stuff. Used to hear his car coming before you heard him. Worst dresser at the club goes to one man and one man alone. Steve Kendall. Steve Kendall used to wear Ruby's clothes. So Steve would never have a pair of shoes when you were going out for a night out. He wouldn't have a shirt, etc. So he would borrow some of the shirts. You would see Steve out, he'd have somebody's shirt on, somebody's trousers, somebody's jacket and somebody's shoes. The next night you'd see him out, he would have somebody else's shoes on, somebody else's shirt, and nothing ever matched. He was absolutely a terrible dresser. The other Tony Brien story, which couldn't really be missed, one of the stories I tell multiple times, is after 2 weeks in Magaluf, we decided we could find a better location, a cheaper kind of price for an apartment. So myself and Tony used to always meet 11 o'clock in the morning at this part of the beach. So if we got split up the night before, which we normally did, we would meet at 11 o'clock. So 1 o'clock comes, 2 o'clock comes, no Tony. I started getting worried about him. Then all of a sudden he arrives, he's got all the gear on from the night before, and he's raging. He goes, "Where have you been? I was knocking on the door, you wouldn't let me in. I was sleeping outside all night, I've been waiting for you to come back," and everything like that. And I was like, "Tony, I was in all night." He said, "I was banging on that door." I said, "Well, I never heard you." And then it kind of dawned on me, and I said, "Tony, you do realise we moved apartments yesterday?" Fastest person at the club? Well, has to be me. Unfortunately, I've looked and dragged all the teammates, and they were all a lot slower. I actually could run the 100 metres in boots in 11 seconds, which was very fast. At the time, John Duncan said to one of the coaches, fitness coaches, John Tivy, "Why don't you take him down to Derby Harriers and get him to run against some of your Commonwealth guys?" So I managed to stay in one Saturday night, and one Sunday morning John picked me up and took me down. We did a warm-up. The first sprint, most of them beat me. I just didn't get the start right. I also didn't have spikes on, so I then borrowed a pair of spikes, and by probably the 4th or 5th sprint I was third. I went back a couple of weeks later and I came second. John thought if I gave up football it would probably be worthwhile going into sprinting, but I think that was probably one of my biggest assets in the game. Was I was very fast. Messiest player had to be Steve Kendall. After he got evicted from his flat, he stayed at the back of the Black Swan. Brien Swan had a porter cabin there and let him stay in it. It's very handy for the pub. But I popped in one day and it was like the programme The Hoarders. It was unbelievable. You had 3 weeks washing there, dishes everywhere. The place was an absolute tip. What I did see lying about was everybody's shoes. Obviously the shoes he'd borrowed, the shirts he'd borrowed, everything like that. And I did say to him one night, "Come on, we'll go out," and he put on everybody else's different clothes, and away we went. He was some man. Players are always first and players are always last in the dressing room. First would be Jim Brown, always on time. Used to stay in the porter cabin, I think next door. He was commercial manager, he was in there all the time. I think he'd be into training before we actually came in from the nightclubs. Ones that were always late was myself and Brian Ferguson. We were always late for various reasons. Worst trainers at the club, couple. Phil Walker for one, and Brien Gunn, second spell there. Gunny was a fantastic player. What a pedigree. Came from Forest. Absolutely superb player, but just didn't look interested when he came to training. He actually trained very well, but it was always he went through the motions. Second one was Phil Walker. Bob Newton once says to me he thought he was a club doctor because he used to see this guy in the treatment room. I actually used to go in there and Phil would be on the table all week. We used to call him Man Friday, and then all of a sudden about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock on a Friday, jump off the table, go and do a little warm up and all that and declare yourself fit. Sorry Phil, but I had to put that one in. First spell at the club we played Wolves, and during the first half I was getting run ragged by the fullback, quite simply because when he was counter-attacking he was taking off and he was quite pacey, so I was going for the through balls and chasing him. So at half time John Duncan said, "Look, he's causing us loads of problems, you're going to have to take care of him." I goes, "Alright Gaffer, I'll take care of him." So halfway through the second half I caught him with my elbow, in quite a physical challenge, and he went down, he was stretchered off, and he actually ended up away at hospital. And when we came back into the dressing room, John Duncan was shaking his head. He said, "When I says take care of him, I didn't mean for good." The second time at the club we'd arranged a trip to Magaluf. So the first week was with the gaffer was there, Chris McMenemy and all the boys. So we flew from Manchester. We arrived 4 o'clock in the morning. Some of the guys, Paul McGugan and Brien Gunn, went to the local pub for a drink. 2 days later, as we were passing them back and forward from the beach and going out at night, they were still in that pub. A well-known Premiership manager was also on that trip, and it was quite interesting because he snored that much one night. After he had a few beers, we decided to lift him and put him into the lift and hit ground. So we pressed the button and down he went to the ground, off we went to our beds, and we were down at breakfast the next day, and there was a lot of families looking across and saying, that was the guy in the lift, that was the guy in the lift. Seemingly he slept in the lift for a long time, and had been going up and down as all the holiday makers were going to the beach. He'll remain nameless. Playing Middlesbrough on the Saturday. The Thursday I declared myself unfit, but I had to turn up at 10:30 at the training ground Saturday morning, which I did. My calf actually felt fine, but the unfortunate thing, I was out the night before on the Friday and had about 10 pints and got in at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was a little bit under the weather. We were playing Middlesbrough that day against Tony Mowbray and Gally Pallister. Kevin Randall said, look, if you feel fit, get yourself home, have a shower and get back for 2 o'clock. Come back at 2 o'clock. John Duncan said, are you fit? He said, you don't look fit. And I said, well, it's up to you. And he played me. I scored 2 goals within about 20 minutes. We won, I think, 2-0 or 2-1 that game. So it just shows you, one-offs do happen. Second spell at the club, I had a night in Sheffield with Paul McGugan. Big Paul could drink, so he still can actually. He doesn't live that far from me, but I haven't seen him for a while. So got a taxi from my favourite taxi company. They never charge us a lot. Chesterfield based people. Tank, you probably know who I am if you're listening. Dropped us off, picked us up, took us back, and I had no drink in the house, and Paul was moaning about 4 or 5 in the morning there was no drink. And then when we woke up in the morning, he says to me, he goes, that drink was terrible, that wine you've got. And I said, I didn't have any wine. He said, the wine in the cabinet. I said, you drank the wine in the cabinet? I said, the wine in the cabinet was the Man of the Match award. It was a bottle of £500 red wine. Did you drink that? He said, yes, it was crap. Oh well.